Hi and welcome back to Sadie's Spincraft. Today's video we're going to spin up the merino, what is it, tencel, or is it seacell? No, it's tencel, merino tencel, because it's got the shiny bit and it hasn't dyed it. So yeah, and I'm going to do the end of the poison study book. So I think there's 5 chapters and the book is Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. And we're going to finish it. It's like that tiny little bit. And then we can start Magic Study. So, yep, we're back on spin and story time. Let's get this started. Chapter 29. I scanned the 2 muscular guards. Swords, short knives, and manacles hung from their belts. They were well armed and wore grim expressions of recognition. I was outmatched. I touched the familiar lump of the switchblade strapped to my thigh, but decided to wait until the odds were more in my favour. The guards gestured for me to accompany them. I shot a final beseeching look at the commander, but nothing so far had roused him from his oblivious stupor. I felt a small surge of hope when the guards led me to a tiny barren room in the guest wing instead of the underground cells in which Brazil's housed his prisoners. Having spent a week in those dank, rat-infested chambers after I killed Rayad, I loathed the thought of even going back. After the door was locked behind me, I took comfort from removing the picks from my hair. The lock was a basic pin and tumbler type, which would be easy to open. Before springing it, I slipped a small pick with a mirror on the end under the door. With the mirror, I spied a pair of boots standing on either side. Those overachieving guards had stationed themselves outside my room. I went to the window. The guest wing was on the 2nd floor. My view included the main courtyard. I could jump to the ground if I was desperate, but for now, I would wait. The next day, I was permitted out of my room only to taste the commander's meals. After breakfast, Mokgan waved a small vial of antidote in front of my face. "If you want this, you must answer a question," he said. I steadied my nerves. With a calm voice, I replied, "You're bluffing. If you wanted me dead, I wouldn't be standing here now. I assure you, it's only a temporary condition." Anger burned in his eyes. "I'm merely offering you a choice. Death by butterfly's dust is a long, ugly, and excruciating experience, while, say, slitting your throat is quick, a moment of pain. What's the question? Where's Valak?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. I hadn't seen Valak since the fight in the woods. Mokkan considered my answer. Taking advantage of his distracted state, I plucked the vial from his hand and drained it in a single gulp. Mokkan's face reddened with fury. He seized my shoulders and shoved me towards the guards. "Take her back to her room," he ordered. Once there, I wondered what mischief Valak was creating. I doubted he was sitting idle. Mokkan's question on Valak's whereabouts confirmed my suspicions. Restless, I paced the small chamber, longing for a workout with Ari and Janko. During my brief visits with the commander over the next few days, I began to recognise that my presence was part of Mokkan's show, in order to keep the commander's advisors from becoming suspicious. Brazil pretended the commander was giving orders. At one point, Brazil leaned close to the commander as if they were having a private conversation, then proclaimed that, per Commander Ambrose's request, a factory tour would be scheduled for the next day. I was allowed to join the group going to the plant. This surprised me almost as much as the fact that none of the commander's advisors made a protest or comment about Brazil's manufacturing creolio instead of the livestock feed he had reported on his permit. They munched on bars of creolio, content to nod and agree with Brazil that the factory was a marvellous invention. As we walked through the building, sweltering heat pulsed from the gigantic roasters that were continuously fed with Scythian beans. Workers streaked with sweat and black dust shovelled coal into the massive fires under the ovens. Once roasted, the beans were conveyed to a large area where other workers cracked their shells with mallets, extracting a dark brown nib. Steel rollers crushed the nibs into a paste. The paste was spooned into 5-foot wide metal containers to which sugar, milk and butter were added. Using steel pitchforks, workers stirred these ingredients until the mixture became a smooth, thick liquid, which was then poured into square and rectangular shaped moulds. A veritable shop of delightful smells and flavours, the place was, however, a joyless environment. The dour employees, uniforms soiled with creolio and sweat, grunted and strained under the physical exertion. During the tour, I searched the various work areas for poisonous or addictive ingredients that might be slipped into the mix, but found none. When the group returned to Brazil's manor house, I watched the animated expressions on the advisors' faces leak away, leaving behind the same blank look that had taken over the commander's face, which meant that there must be a link between eating creolio and succumbing to Mokgan's magic. Mokgan's show would end as soon as he had gained control of the advisors' minds, and when that happened, my accommodations would change for the worse. That night, under cover of darkness, I dropped my cloak out of the window of my room and banged on the door, calling the guards. When the door opened, I declared, "I need a bath." Without waiting for a response, I strode with purpose down the hallway. The guards followed. At the baths, one guard stopped me in the hallway while his companion looked around inside. Only when he was sure I would be alone did he nod and step back. As I went through the entrance, I said in an authoritative voice, "I don't need an audience. Wait here, I won't be long." To my delight, they remained outside. I scurried to the far wall where, hidden from view, there was another entrance. The guards might work in the manor house, but I'd grown up here. With a child's curiosity and free time, I had been able to explore almost every corner of the house. Only Brazil's private suite, office and Rayad's wing had been off limits. Unfortunately, once I turned 16, Rayad's wing became my daily nightmare. Pushing away the thought, I concentrated on the present. I pulled the handle of the door and encountered my first unwanted surprise. It was locked. No problem, I thought, reaching for my picks. The mechanism popped with ease. The door swung open and I discovered a second nasty shock. One of the guards waited in the hallway. He smirked. I rushed him. Using my momentum, I shoved him off balance and punched him in the groin. A dirty Valak move, but I didn't care, as I raced down the corridor, leaving the guard far behind. Slipping out the south entrance, I retrieved my cloak and then headed west to find my pack and bow. Bright moonlight illuminated my path, and I could see where I was going. However, my true path was less evident. I knew I couldn't help the commander from a locked room, but I was unsure what I could do from the outside. I needed to talk to Valak. Deciding it would be too risky to go to the barracks, I took to the treetops. Only Valak knew this trick. Once he learned of my escape, he would track me. When I reached the open area reserved for the annual fire festival's visit to MD5, I stopped for the night. Shivering in my cloak, I huddled against the tree trunk, blowing clouds of steam from my mouth. Once I heard the baying dogs and distant shouts, but no one came close to my makeshift bed in the tree. Sleep eluded me. I was too cold and nervous. Instead, I envisioned the bright fabric of the festival's tent in the clearing, hoping to warm myself by remembering the hot energy of the fire festival nights. I imagined the big tops in their proper places, dancers, singers and acrobats lined up in the middle of the clearing. Food stands huddled in and around the big tents, scenting the air with mouth-watering treats. I went to the festival every hot season. When I had lived under Brazil's roof, it had been the highlight of my existence, although my memories of those last 2 years, when I had been Rayad's laboratory rat, were dreadful. Unable to resist, I climbed down from the tree and walked through my imaginary festival. I stopped where the acrobat's tent had stood, wondering if I could still perform the tumbling routine that had won me first place and the fire amulet. Without thought, I tossed off my cloak and started a warm-up. In the back of my mind, I knew I should be hiding, that it was stupid to be this exposed to discovery. But the desire to relive my one moment of true joy was too strong to deny. Soon all thoughts of Brazil, Rayad and Mokkan were banished as I spun and soared through the air. My mind settled into a mental zone of pure concentration I used when I fought. I relished the release, brief as it might be, from my days of tension and threat. As I performed my routine, I discovered that I could push my heightened awareness beyond my body to encompass the trees, even sense the animals in the forest. An owl, perched high on a branch, tracked the movements of a field mouse. A family of possums slipped without sound through the underbrush. A woman, crouched behind a stone, watched me. Stealing into Iris's mind was as easy as slipping on a pair of gloves. Her thoughts flowed into my mind like silk. I reminded her of her younger sister, Lily, and she longed to be back home with her family, not sneaking around in cold, horrid Ixia. The situation in the north was getting dangerous. She would be safer in Sitia. But for how long, she wondered. As a master-level magician, she couldn't allow the abuse of power that she had felt emanating from the area to continue. Kangam, who called himself Mokkan, was producing theobroma at alarming quantities. He had also rigged a way to intensify his power. Iris's thoughts returned to me, and I felt a tug on our mental connection. Yelena, what are you doing in my mind? I'm not sure how I got here. Haven't you figured it out by now? You're focusing your magic when you fight. That's why you instinctively anticipate your opponent's moves. I felt you at the castle when you were fighting your friends. Now that you have learned to harness your power, you have taken the next logical step by expanding it beyond the immediate area. My surprise broke our link. I stopped, panting in the cold night air as Iris emerged. Iris emerged from the woods. Does that mean I'm not going to flame out? I asked. You've stabilised, but you won't get any stronger unless you receive the proper training. You don't want to waste your potential. Come south now. Your pursuers are miles away. The commander is ensconced. What is that word? Angfire. Is ensorcelled. Nothing you can do. His mind is probably gone. Mokkan has been feeding him theobroma. I've smelled it since I arrived. Theobroma? Do you mean Crelio, the brown-coloured sweet that Brazil's manufacturing? That sounds right. It opens a mind to magical influence. It relaxes the mental defences, allowing easy access to someone's mind. We use it as a training tool in controlled situations where a fledgling magician is close to the subject. The commander has a strong personality, very resistant to magical suggestion. Theobroma breaks down that barrier, which helps when a student is learning, but using it on the commander to gain control of his mind is the same as rape. Iris pulled her cloak tight around her shoulders. Even with Theobroma, a magician shouldn't be able to reach the commander's mind from this distance, but Mokkan has. He has found a way to boost his power. Iris rubbed her arms with her hands, trying to warm up. I'm guessing Mokkan's visit to the castle was to lock himself into the commander's mind so he could lead him out here. What can we do to break the lock? I asked. Kill Mokkan. But it'll be difficult. He's very powerful. Isn't there another way? I recalled my conversation in the woods with Valak about murder as a solution. My formula, he had said, and it still annoyed me. He'd probably never been in the lose-lose situation I was always finding myself in. Block Mokkan's power supply. That might work. He'll still have his magic, but it won't be enhanced. What would this extra power look like? How do we find it? My guess would be that he's either recruiting a number of magicians to pool their power, or he's devised a way to concentrate the power source without warping it. She paused, considering. Diamonds. Diamonds? A cold knot of anxiety churned in my stomach. There was so much I didn't know about magic. Yes, very expensive, but they will gather and store power like a hot coal holds heat. He might be using diamonds to enhance his magic. He could need a man-sized circle of diamonds, and that's not easily hidden. If we could find this circle, I might be able to use it to block his power, or at least redirect it long enough for you to awaken the commander. What if the source is a group of magicians? How would I recognise them? Unfortunately, Ixia doesn't have a uniform for magicians, Iris said, her voice sharp with sarcasm. Instead of searching for them, look for an empty room with a wagon wheel design painted on the door. To link magical power, each magician must be perfectly aligned along the edge of a circle. I can search the manor, but I need help. I need Valak. You need a miracle, Iris replied, with a wry twist to her lips. Can you direct Valak here? He's already on his way. You two have forged a strong connection, although I don't know if it's of magical origin. Iris pursed her lips. I'd better go before Valak arrives. When and if you discover the source of Mokkan's power, chant my name in your mind. I'll hear you call, because we two have created a bond. Our mental link grows stronger each time we communicate. I'll try to help you with the commander, but no promises. I'm after Mokkan. She disappeared into the forest. While I waited for Valak, I paced on the packed dirt and tried to think of a way to find Mokkan's power source. Iris's words about needing a miracle were, indeed an understatement. I distracted myself. I focused on my surroundings. The tread of my feet had rubbed out the grass and trampled the earth until it was worn smooth and shiny. I remembered digging my heels into this same hard dirt the last time I was here, when Rhea dragged me to the manor house to punish me for disobeying him and winning the amulet. I had pressed that prize so tight against my skin it had left a mark. Then I had hidden it to keep it out of Rayad's cruel hands. 2 years had passed since I had buried my amulet. Someone had probably discovered it by now. For an exercise, I tried using my new magical skill. Directing my awareness downwards, I circled the clearing. I made many circuits and was growing bored when suddenly the soles of my feet felt hot. When I continued, they cooled. I moved here and there until once more heat stabbed my feet. Taking my grappling hook from my pack, I dug at the spot. My efforts revealed some fabric. I tossed my hook aside and clawed at the ground with my fingertips, uncovering my lost amulet. It was dull and covered with dirt. The ribbon that held it was torn and stained. Pressing the flame-shaped amulet against my chest, I felt warmth emanating from it. I put it down to fill the hole, humming a tune. Cleaning the palm-sized medal on my pants, I strung it onto the necklace chain with Valak's butterfly. Not the best hiding place, wouldn't you agree? Valak asked. I jumped. How long had he been standing behind me? They're searching for you. Why did you run? He asked. I briefed Valak on the commander, Mokkan, the factory and the advisors, hoping he would draw the same conclusion I had. So Mokkan is using Crelio to take control of their minds. But where's he getting the power? I don't know. We need to search the manor. You mean I need to? No, we. I grew up there. I know every inch. The first place I wanted to look was in Rayad's laboratory wing. When do we start? Now? We have 4 hours till dawn. What are we looking for? When I explained that we were seeking either a circle of diamonds or a painted wheel, Valak's thin eyebrows puckered as if he wanted to question me about how I had come by this information. He held his peace and headed back towards the barracks. I hid outside while Valak changed into the black skin-tight sneak suit. He brought me a dark-coloured shirt to wear over my bright red uniform shirt and carried an unlit bull's-eye lantern. My cloak would be too cumbersome for creeping through the halls, so I hid it in the bushes. We found a back door near the servants' quarters. Valak lit the lantern. Pushing the slide almost closed, he allowed only a thin ray of light to escape. Inside the manor, I took the lead. Rayad's suite was in the east wing on the ground floor, opposite the laboratory. The entire wing had been his, and there were a number of doors that he'd kept locked while I had been the resident laboratory rat. Old horrors haunted me as we searched. My skin felt tight and hot. I recognised the faint acidic aroma of fear that mixed with the dust stirred by footsteps. It was my smell. I had worn it like a perfume when Rayad dragged me to his test. The thick air pressed down on me, filling my mouth with the taste of ashes and blood. I had bitten my hand without conscious thought. It was an old habit. A way to stifle my cries. Exploring the laboratory room, the thin lantern's beam lantern's beam spotlighted instruments hanging from the walls and piled on the tables. Each revelation sent a cold, numbing pulse through my body, and I shrank away from the large shadows of equipment, unrevealed, unwilling to even brush against it. The room resembled a torture chamber rather than a place for experiments. Feeling like an animal, pierced in the metal jaws of a trap, I wanted to scream and bolt from the room. Why had I brought Valak here? Brazil's advisors were housed on the second floor. Motkan's diamond device, if there was such a thing, was probably hidden near his room, not down here. Valak hadn't said a word since lighting the lantern. In the hallway, outside Rayad's room, a physical force prevented me from entering. My muscles trembled. An icy sweat soaked my uniform. I waited at the door while Valak went in. I could see the dark, malevolent shape of Rayad's sadistic toy chest lurking in a corner of the room. If I burned that chest to cinders, I wonder would my nightmares cease. Not if I can help it, Rayad's ghost said, materialising beside me in the hallway. I jerked back, hitting the wall. A yelp escaped my lips before I could shove my hand in my mouth. I thought you were gone for good, I whispered. Never, Yelena. I will always be with you. My blood has soaked into your soul. You have no chance of cleansing me away. I have no soul, I said under my breath. Rayad laughed. Your soul is drenched black with blood of your victims, my dear. That is why you can't see it. When you die, that heavy blood-filled essence will sink to the bottom of the earth, where you will burn in eternity for your crimes. From the voice of experience, I whispered, with a rage that made my voice hiss. Valak came out of Rayad's room, with a face pale as bone. He stared at me with a horrified expression so long that I wondered if he had been struck dumb. Finally, closing the door, Valak walked past the ghost without seeing him, then stopped at the next locked room, pausing a moment with head bowed to press a hand to his forehead. There's someone who really needs to be haunted, Rayad said, stabbing a ghostly finger at Valak. It's a shame he doesn't let his demons bother him, because I know a certain dead king that would love to plague him. Rayad looked at me. Only the weak invite their demons to live with them. Isn't that right? I refused to answer Rayad as I followed Valak. We continued our search, but it was obvious that, other than the laboratory, the wing had been abandoned. There were 3 doors left. While Valak picked the 2 locks, Rayad chatted. My father will soon send you to me, Yelena. I'm looking forward to spending eternity with you. He leered and wiggled his fingers at me. But I was no longer interested in the ghost. The contents of the room before me riveted my attention. Inside, dozens of women and a few men flinched from the yellow beam of Valak's lantern. Greasy hair obscured their dirt-streaked faces. Rags clung to their emaciated bodies. None of them spoke or cried out. To my increasing horror, I realised they were chained to the floor, in circles, 1 outer circle and 2 inner rings, with lines painted between them. When Valak and I stepped into the room, the foul stench of unwashed bodies and excrement wafted through the air. Gagging, I covered my mouth. Valak moved among them, asking questions. Who are you? Why are you here? His queries were met with silence. Their vacant eyes followed his passage. They remained where they were, chained, staring. I began to recognise some of the grubby faces. They had lived in the orphanage with me. They were the older girls and boys who had graduated and were supposed to be employed throughout the district. The sight of one girl, her ginger hair dull and matted, finally made me cry out in pain. Cara's soft brown eyes held no sign of intelligence as I stroked her shoulder and whispered her name. The free-spirited girl I had cared for in the orphanage had become a mindless, empty shell of a woman. "My students," Rayad said, his chest puffed out in pride as he floated in the middle of the room. "The ones who didn't fail." "What now?" I asked Valak with a shaky voice. "You're arrested and thrown in the dungeon," Mogcan answered from the entrance. Valak and I spun in unison. Mogcan loomed in the doorway, his arms folded across his chest. Valak charged him. Fury blazed in his eyes. Mogcan stepped back into the hallway. I saw Valak stop just past the door and raise his hands in the air. "Damn," I thought, racing to help him. Mogcan stood like a coward behind 8 guards. The tips of their swords were aimed mere inches from Valak's chest. Chapter 30. As sword points pricked my back, I watched Valak, expecting him to spring into action during the whole miserable trip to Brazil's holding cells. I waited for him to blur into motion as they stripped and searched us, enduring the humiliation of being prodded and poked by rough hands as they confiscated my backpack, switchblade and necklace. Losing my clothes didn't upset me as much as losing Valak's butterfly and my amulet. I prepared for a sudden jailbreak when we were led down into the prison and was still waiting as we were shoved into adjoining cells. I held my breath as the heavy metal lock clanged shut on our underground chambers. The soldiers tossed our clothing in through the bars, then they left, abandoning us to blackness. I fumbled with my uniform, trying to button my shirt in the dark. Here I was again. A nightmare turned real as we went through the guard room, down one flight of steps and into Brazil's small dungeon, which only contained 8 cells, 4 on each side of a short corridor. Valak and I were in the 2 cells closest to the left of the steps. A familiar, loud, rancid stench permitted the prison. The thick, silty air so overpowered my senses that it took me a while to realise we were the only occupants. Unable to bear the sudden quiet, I asked, "Valak, what? Why didn't you fight the guards? I would have helped you." 8 men had drawn swords pointed at my chest. Any sudden movement and I would have been skewered. "I'm flattered that you think I could win against those odds. 4 armed opponents, maybe, but 8 is definitely too many." I could hear the amusement in Valak's voice. "Then we pick the locks and make our escape." My confidence was based on the fact that Valak was a master assassin and trained fighter, a man who wouldn't stay confined for long. That would be ideal, provided we had something to pick them with. Valak replied, dashing my hopes. I searched my cell with my hands. Finding nothing but filthy straw, rat droppings and unrecognisable muck, I sank to the floor with my back against the one stone wall I shared with Valak. After a long moment, Valak asked, What was that your fate? If you hadn't killed Rayad, were you slated to be chained to the floor, mindless?" The image of those captives burned in my mind. My flesh crawled. For the first time I was content to have failed Rayad's tests. As I thought more about them, I remembered the comment Iris had made regarding a magician's ability to steal magic from others. Finally, the significance of the women and men sitting in circles hits me. Mokkan's extra power came from those chained captives. Brazil, Rayad and Mokkan must have screened the children of the orphanage for magical potential. Then while experimenting on them, Mokkan had wiped their minds clean, leaving them mindless vessels from which to draw more power. I think Brazil and Rayad were determined to reduce me to that mental state, but I endured. I explained my theory about the captives to Valak. "Tell me what happened to you," Valak said, his voice tight. I paused, then my tale flowed from my lips, in bits and pieces at first, but the words soon gushed with the same speed as the tears streaking down my face. I didn't spare him any details. I didn't gloss over the unpleasant parts, telling Valak everything: my 2 years as a laboratory rat, Rayad's tortures and torments, the cruel games, the humiliations, the beatings, the longing to be good for Rayad, and finally the rape that led to the murder. I purged myself of the black stain on Rayad. I felt light-headed with the release. Valak remained silent throughout my disclosure, neither commenting nor questioning. Finally, with ice crystallizing in his voice, he said, "Brazil and Mokkan will be destroyed." Promise or a threat, I couldn't tell, but with all of Valak's force behind it, it was more than an idle talk. As if they had heard their names, Brazil and Mokkan stepped through the main door of the dungeon. 4 guards holding lanterns escorted them. They stopped at our cells. "It's good to see you back where you belong," Brazil said to me. "My desire to feel your blood on my hands has tempted me, but Mokkan has kindly informed me of your fate. Should you not receive your antidote?" Brazil paused and smiled with pure satisfaction. "Seeing my son's killer writhing in excruciating pain will be better justice. I'll visit later to hear your screams. And if you beg me, I might put you out of your misery, just so I can breathe in the hot scent of your blood." Brazil's gaze bored into Valak's cell. "Disobeying a direct order is a capital offence. Commander Ambrose has signed your death warrant. Your hanging is scheduled for noon tomorrow." Brazil cocked his head, appraising Valak like a thoroughbred. "I think I shall have your head stuffed and mounted. You'll make an effective decoration in my office when I become commander." Laughing, Brazil and Mokkan left the dungeon. The darkness that flowed in after them felt even heavier than before. It pressed against my chest, giving me a tight, panicky feeling around my ribs. I paced myself. My emotions swung from sheer terror to overwhelming despondency. I kicked at the bars, threw straw into the air and pounded on the walls. "Yelena," Valak finally said, "settle down. Get some sleep. You'll need your strength for tonight." "Oh, yeah, everyone needs to be well rested to die," I said, but I regretted my harshness when I remembered that Valak too faced death. "I'll try." I lay on the foul straw, knowing it was futile to try and rest. How could anyone sleep her last hours away? Apparently, I could. I woke with a cry, my nightmare about rats melding with reality as I felt a warm, furry mass resting on my leg. Leaping to my feet, I kicked the rodent. It crashed into the wall and skittered away. "Nice nap?" Valak asked. "I've had better." My sleeping companion snored. Valak grunted in amusement. "How long was I out?" "It's hard to tell without the sun. I'm guessing it's close to sunset." I had received my last dose of antidote yesterday morning. That gave me until tomorrow morning to live. But the symptoms of the poison would take hold sometime tonight. "Valak, I have a My throat closed. My stomach muscles contracted with such severity that I felt as if someone were trying to rip them from my body. "What's the matter? Stomach cramp from hell?" I said, still gasping even though the pain had subsided. "Is this a start?" "Yes. They begin slowly, but soon the convulsions will be continuous." Another wave of agony hit, and I crumpled to the floor. When it passed, I crawled to the straw bed, waiting for the next assault. Unable to endure the anticipation in silence, I said, "Valak, talk to me. Tell me something to distract me." "Like what?" "I don't care, anything. Here's something you can take some comfort from. There's no poison, called butterfly's dust." "What?" I wanted to scream at him, but a doubling over vomit-inducing convulsion hit, causing my abdominal muscles to feel as if they were being shredded with a knife. When I was sensible again, Valak explained, "You're going to want to die. Wish you were already dead, but in the end, you'll be quite alive." "Why tell me now?" "The mind controls the body. If you believed that you were going to die, then you might have died from the conviction alone." "Why wait until now to tell me?" I demanded, furious. He could have relieved my anguish. "A tactical decision." I bit back a nasty reply. I tried to see his logic, to put myself in his place. My training sessions with Ari and Janko had included strategy and tactics. Janko had compared sparring to a card game. Keep your best moves close to your chest and only use them when you've nothing left, he had said. An opportunity to escape might have presented itself during the day. In that case, Valak wouldn't have to show his last card and tell me about the poison. "What about the cramps?" I asked, just as another one seized. I rolled into a tight ball, hoping to relieve some of the pain, but to no avail. "Withdrawal symptoms." "From what?" "Your so-called antidote," Valak said. "It's an interesting concoction. I use it to make someone sick. As the potion wears off, it produces stomach cramps worthy of a day in bed. It's perfect for putting someone temporarily out of commission without killing them. If you continue to drink it, then the symptoms are forestalled until you stop." Of all the books I had studied, I didn't recall reading about a tonic like that. What's the name? White fright. The knowledge that I wasn't going to die erased the frightened panic and helped me to endure the pain. I viewed each contraction as a step that must be taken in order to be free of the substance. "What about butterfly's dust?" I asked. "Doesn't exist. I made it up. It sounded good. I needed some threat to keep the food tasters from running away without using guards or locked doors." An unwelcome thought popped into my head. Does the commander know it's a ruse? If he did, Mokkan would also know. No, he believes you've been poisoned. During the night, it was hard for me to remember that I had not been poisoned. Torturous cramps refused to release me. I crawled around the cell, retching and screaming. I was vaguely aware at one point of Brazil and Mokkan gloating over me. I didn't care that they watched. I didn't care that they laughed. All I cared about was finding a position that would alleviate the pain. Finally, I fell into an exhausted sleep. I woke lying on the muck-covered floor of the cell, my right arm stretched through the bars. I marvelled more over the fact that I clutched Valak's hand than the fact that I was alive. "Yelena, are you all right?" The concern in Valak's voice was evident. "I think so," I replied with a rasp. My throat burned with thirst. A clang clank rang out as someone unlocked the prison door. "Play dead," Valak whispered, releasing my hand. "Try to get them close to the cell," he instructed as 2 guards came into the dungeon. I yanked my Valak warmed hand into the cell and poked my ice-cold left hand out just as the men descended the stairs. "Damn! The stench down here is worse than the latrine after a brew party," said the guard holding the lantern. "You think she's dead?" the second guard asked. With my face to the wall, I closed my eyes and held my breath as the yellow light swept my body. The guard touched my hand. "Cold as snow-cap piss. Let's drag her out before she starts to rot. You think it smells bad now?" The snap of the lock was followed by a squeak of the metal as a cell door opened. I concentrated on being a dead weight while the guard dragged me out by my feet. Then the light moved away from me. I risked a peek. The guard with the lantern walked ahead to light the way, leaving the upper body in darkness. As we passed Valak's cell, I seized the bars with both hands. The guard with the lantern walked ahead to light the way, leaving my upper body in darkness. As we passed Valak's cell, I seized the bar with both hands. "Ugh! Hold up, she's stuck." "On what?" the lantern guard asked. "I don't know. Come back here with that bloody light." I released my grip, hooking my arm inside the cell. "Back off," the lantern guard warned Valak. His meaty hand tugged at my elbow. Then he grunted softly. I opened my eyes in time to see the lantern's light extinguish as it toppled to the ground. "What the hell?" the other man exclaimed. He was still holding my feet. He backed away from Valak's bars. I bent my legs, pulling my body close to his boots. He yelped in surprise when I grabbed his ankles. He tripped and fell back. The sickening crunch of bone striking stone wasn't what I expected. His body went limp. I stood on shaky legs. Hearing a thud and jingle of keys, I turned back in time to see Valak lighting the lantern. The other guard was propped against the bars, his head cocked at an unnatural angle. In the weak glow, I gazed at the prone form at my feet. The soldier's head had struck the edge of the bottom step. A black liquid began to pool around my boots. I had just killed another man. I began to tremble. A 4th man had died because of me. Had the robbing of my soul reduced me to a heartless killer? Did Valak feel any remorse or guilt when he took a life? I watched him through a veil of blood. Efficient as always, Valak stripped the dead guards of their weapons. "Wait here," he instructed. Unlocking the main door of the prison, he sprang through the entrance to the guard room. Shouts, grunts, and the sound of flesh striking flesh reaching my ears as I waited on the stairway. No remorse, no guilt. Valak did what he had to do to win his side. When Valak motioned me to join him, I saw that blood had splattered on his face, chest and arms. 3 guards, either unconscious or dead, were strewn about the room. My backpack sat on a table, its contents scattered about. I stuffed everything back in while Valak tried to open the remaining locked door between freedom and us. Although meagre, I wanted my possessions, including my butterfly and amulet back. Once I wrapped the chain around my neck, I felt strangely optimistic. "Damn," Valak said. "What?" "The captain has the only key to this door. He will open it when it's time to change the guards." "Try these." I handed Valak my picks. He grinned. While he worked on the lock, I found a pitcher of water and wash barrel. The fear of being caught couldn't override the desire to rinse off my face and hands, but that was not enough. The need to rid myself of the stench of vomit and blood overpowered me. Soon I was dumping buckets of water over my head until I was soaked through. I drained half the water pitcher before I thought to offer some to Valak. He stopped to drink, then continued to pick the lock. Finally it popped open. Valak peered out into the hallway. Perfect, no guards. He pulled the door wide. Let's go. Taking my hand and lantern, Valak turned away from our only escape and led me back down into the prison, pausing to leave the door to the cell wide open as well. Are you insane? I whispered as he dragged me toward the last cell. Freedom's that way, I pointed. He ignored me as he unlocked the door. Trust me, this is the perfect hiding spot. The mess we left will soon be discovered. The open doors prove we've fled. Valak pushed me ahead of him into the cell. Search parties will be sent out. When all the soldiers have left the manor, we'll make our move. Until then, we lay low. Valak made a makeshift bed of straw in the far corner of the cell. After extinguishing and hiding the lantern, he yanked me down. I curled on my side with my back to him. Shivering in my wet clothes, Valak pulled some straw on top of us and wrapped an arm around me. He drew me close. I stiffened at the contact, but his body heat warmed me, and I soon relaxed into his grip. At first, every tiny noise made my heart race, but I shouldn't have worried. The commotion that ensued when our escape was discovered was deafening. Arguing and accusations being shouted, search parties were organised and dispatched. It was agreed that we had an hour head start, but Brazil and Mokan argued on which direction we had taken. Valak's probably retreating west to well-known territory, Brazil stated with authority. South is the logical choice, Mokan insisted. We have the commander. There's nothing they can do. They're running for their lives, not towards strategic position. I'll take a horse and scan the forest with my magic. Valak harumphed in my ear and whispered, they actually think I would abandon the commander. They have no concept of loyalty. When the prison had been quiet and empty for a few hours, I grew bored and anxious to be gone. The door to the cells had remained wide open, allowing a faint light to illuminate our surroundings. Can we go now? I asked. Not yet. I believe it's still daylight. We'll wait until dark. To help pass the time, I asked Valak how he had become involved with the commander. I thought it an unintrusive question, but he grew so quiet that I regretted asking it. After a long pause, he spoke. My family lived in Isfahan province before it was renamed MD1. A particularly harsh winter collapsed the building that housed my father's leather business, ruining all his equipment. He needed to replace his equipment to stay in business, but the soldiers who came to our house to collect the tax money wouldn't listen to reason. Valak's arms tightened around me. A minute stretched longer before he continued. I was just a skinny little kid at the time, but had 3 older brothers. They were about Harry's size and had his strength. When my father told the soldiers that he paid the full tax amount, if he paid the full tax amount, he wouldn't have enough left to feed his family. Valak paused for several heartbeats. They killed my brothers. They laughed and said, problem solved, now you have 3 less mouths to feed. The muscles on Valak's arms trembled with tension. Naturally, I wanted revenge, but not on the soldiers. They were only messengers. I wanted the king. the man who had allowed his soldiers to murder my brothers in his name. So I learned how to fight, and I studied the assassin's art until I was unbeatable. I travelled around using my new skills to earn money. The royal upper class was so corrupt they paid me to kill each other. Then I was commissioned to kill a young man named Ambrose, whose speeches called for rebellion and made the royals nervous. He became popular, gathering large crowds. People started to resist the king's doctrines. Then Ambrose disappeared, hiding his growing army and employing covert operations against the monarchy. My payment to find and kill Ambrose was significant. I ambushed him, expecting to have my knife in his heart before he could draw breath to cry out, but he blocked the blow, and I found myself fighting for my life and losing. Instead of killing me, though, Ambrose carved a C on my chest with my own knife. The same weapon, by the way, that I later used to kill the king. Then Ambrose declared himself my commander and announced that I now worked for him and no one else. I agreed, and I promised him that if he got me close enough to kill the king, I would be loyal to him forever. My first assignment was to kill the person who had paid me to assassinate Ambrose. Throughout these years, I've watched him achieve his goals with a single-minded determination and without excess violence and pain. He hasn't been corrupted by power or greed. He's consistent and loyal to his people, and there's been no one in this world that I care for more until now. I held my breath. It had been a simple, innocent question. I hadn't expected such an intimate response. Yelena, you've driven me crazy. You've caused me considerable trouble, and I've contemplated ending your life twice since I've known you. Valik's warm breath in my ears sent a shiver down my spine. But you've slipped under my skin, invaded my blood, and seized my heart. That sounds more like a poison than a person, was all I could say. His confession had both shocked and thrilled me. Exactly. You have poisoned me. He rolled me over to face him. Before I could make another sound, he kissed me. Long suppressed desire flared to life as I wrapped my arms around his neck, returning his kiss with equal passion. My response was a delightful surprise. I had feared after Rayad's abuse, my body would clench tight in horror and revulsion. But the intertwining of our bodies linked our minds and spirits together. The distant sound of music vibrated in the air, pulsing. The magical harmony soon rose to a crescendo and encompassed us like a warm blanket. The prison cell and filthy straw dropped away from our awareness. Whiteness, draped in snow silk, surrounded us. On this plane we were equals, partners. Our souls bonded. His pleasure was my ecstasy. My blood pumped in his heart. Utter bliss came in short snatches. Although Valik and I were happy to try again, we had merged. Our minds had become one. I drew in his essence, feasting on the feel of his body in mine, exhilarating in the caress of his skin against mine. He filled the hollow emptiness inside my heart with joy and light. Even though we lay in the grubby straw and faced an uncertain future, a deep hum of contentment vibrated throughout my body. Chapter 31. Reality and the rank order of the decomposing animal intruded. Darkness had descended. "Let's go," Valik said, pulling me to my feet. "Where?" I asked, adjusting my uniform. "The commander's room, so we can take him back to the castle with us." Valak brushed the straw from his hair and clothes. Won't work. Why not? Valak demanded. As soon as you touch him, Morgan will know. Morgan will know. I explained about magic Morgan's link to the commander and how he had established that connection using Crelio. How do we break the bond? Valak asked. It was time to tell him about my magic. I felt lightheaded, as if I stood on the edge of the world. Taking a deep breath, I related the encounters and conversations I'd had with Iris and how she might be able to help us. Valak stood still for a full minute while my heart thumped madly in my chest. Do you trust her? He asked. Yes. Is there anything else you haven't told me? My head spun. So much had happened, and we still needed to stop a powerful magician. Death was a real possibility. I wanted Valak to know how I felt. I love you. Valak wrapped me in his arms. My love has been yours since the fire festival. If those goons had killed you, I knew then that I would never be the same. I didn't want or expect this, but I couldn't resist you. I moulded my body to him, wanting to share his skin. He took my hand. Let's go. We raided the guard room for uniforms before slipping into the hallway. Wearing Brazil's colours of black and green, we hoped to avoid discovery. As we stole through the manor, Valak needed his bag of tricks, so we headed towards the barracks. While I retrieved my cloak, Valak slid inside the empty wooden building. The soldiers had gone to search for us. I paced in the shadows of the building, chanting Iris's name in my mind. We needed a plan of attack. We had to move tonight. Shouts and curses emanated from the barracks. Running inside, I found Ari and Janko with their swords drawn and pointed at Valak. Stop! I said. Spotting me, Ari and Janko sheathed their weapons, smiling. We thought Valak had escaped without you, Ari said, giving me a bear hug. Aren't you supposed to be with the search party? Valak asked. As he pulled his black bag from under a bunk, he had changed into an ebony coverall with numerous pockets. We're too sick, Janko said, his best smirk in place. What? I asked. The charges against you were obviously fabricated, so we refused to take part in the hunt, Janko said. That's insubordination. Valak extracted a long knife and some darts from his bag. That was the point. What's a fellow have to do around here in order to get arrested and thrown in the dungeon? Janko asked. I stared at Janko in amazement. They had been willing to risk a court-martial in order to help me. He had meant what he had inscribed on my switchblade. Which direction did the search parties go? Valak asked. He placed weapons in various pockets and strapped his sword and knife onto his belt. Mainly south and east, although a few small groups were sent west and north, Ari replied. Dogs, yes. And the manor, minimal coverage. Good. You're with us, Valak ordered them both. They snapped to attention. Yes, sir. Prep for covert ops, but keep the swords. You're going to need them. Valak finished dressing as Ari and Janko got ready. Wait, I said. I don't want them getting into trouble. My heart started to skitter around in my chest, and the nauseous wave threatened to send bile up my throat as fear of what we were planning to do overcame me. Valak squeezed my shoulders. We need their help. You're going to need more than that. Iris's voice came out of the darkness. 3 men simultaneously drew their swords. When she stepped into the weak lantern light, Valak relaxed, but Ari and Janko brandished their weapons. At ease, Valak ordered. Seeing their reluctance, I said, "She's a friend. She's here to help." I looked at her. "We discovered Mokkan's extra power source." "What is it?" I told her about the mindless captives and how they had been chained in circles, and then explained my theory that Mokkan had wiped their minds to seize their power. Horror and revulsion touched her face. Despite her rough exterior, her concern went deep. She managed to regain her no-nonsense frown, but Ari and Janko looked a little green, as if they were going to be sick. "What's this all about?" Ari asked. "I'll explain later. Right now," I stopped short. A complete plan of attack snapped into my mind, but it included Ari and Janko. I had been hoping to keep them safe, but Valak was right. We needed their help. I want you to protect Iris with everything you have. It's very important," I told my friends. "Yes, sir," Ari and Janko said together. Stunned, I stared at them. They had addressed me as sir, meaning they would follow my orders, even if it led to their death. Valak's eyes drilled into mine. "You have a strategy?" "Yes." "Tell us." Why, I thought, as Valak and I crept through the silent, empty halls of the manor, had I opened my mouth. My plan. What did I know? Valak, Ari and Janko had years of experience doing this nerve-wracking, stomach-turning work. But everyone risked their necks following my plan. In the dark corridor, I swallowed my fear and reviewed the strategy. At the commander's door, we waited to give the others time to move into position. My short breaths seemed to echo off the walls, and I felt as if I was either going to scream or pass out. After a few moments, Valak picked the lock and we slipped inside. He secured the door. Lighting a lantern, he moved towards the oversized four-poster bed. The commander was stretched out on top of the bedding, fully clothed. His vacant eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. He made no acknowledgement of our presence. I sat beside him and took his hand in mine. Following Iris's brief instructions, I imagined my brick wall, then expanded it until I had built a dome of brick that encompassed us both. Valak pressed against the wall next to the door, waiting for Mokkan. His expression had hardened into his battle face. He was stone cold on the exterior, but I knew that a lethal, molten fury resided within. It wasn't long before a key turned in the lock. Silence. Then the door burst open. 4 armed guards rushed in. Valak had one down before the man could react. The ringing of swords filled the room. Mokkan slinked into the chamber after his men had Valak fully engaged. Avoiding the fighting, he moved toward me. A condescending smile touched his lips. "A brick igloo? How nice. Come on, Yelena. Give me some credit. A stone fortress or a steel wall would have been more of a challenge." I felt a solid blow strike my mental defences. Brick crumbled, patching holes as he hammered on my shield. I prayed with desperation that Ari, Janko and Iris had made it to the room where Mokkan kept his prisoners chained. Iris had explained that she needed to be there with them in order to block Mokkan's extra power. Even if she succeeded, I would still have to deal with Mokkan's own magic. Halting his attack for a second, Mokkan jerked his head to the side, staring off into the distance. Nice trick, he said. Friends of yours? They're in Rayad's hallway, but unless they can fight their way through 10 men, they won't make it to my children. My heart sank. Mokkan resumed his onslaught with renewed determination. 1 guard out of 4 remained in battle with Valak. Hurry, I thought. My defences weakened with each blow. I threw every ounce of strength into my wall, but it collapsed into a cloud of dust. Mokkan's power gripped me like a giant's fist around my rib cage. I yelped in pain and dropped the commander's hand. I stood on weak legs beside the bed just as Valak yanked his sword from the last guard's dead body. Stop, or she dies, Mokkan ordered. Valak froze. 3 more guards hustled into the room, Brazil on their heels. They surrounded Valak, taking his sword. They forced him to his knees with his hands on his head. Go ahead, General. Kill her, Mokkan said, stepping back to let Brazil pass. I should have let you slit her throat the first day she arrived. Why listen to Mokkan? I asked Brazil. He's not to be trusted. Pain crawled up along my spine as Mokkan turned his burning eyes upon me. What do you mean? Brazil demanded. He gripped his sword as he glanced from me to Mokkan. Mokkan laughed. She's only trying to delay the inevitable. Like when you tried to delay the Citian Treaty negotiations by poisoning the cognac. Or were you aiming to stop the delegation altogether? I asked him. Mokkan's shock revealed his guilt. Although surprise touched Valak's face, he remained silent. His body tensed, ready to spring into action. That doesn't make sense, Brazil said. Mokkan wants to avoid contact with the Southerners. They know about. My throat closed. I clawed at my neck, unable to breathe. Brazil turned to Mokkan, his square face creased with anger. What have you been up to? We don't need a treaty with Scythia. We were getting our supplies without any problems, but you wouldn't listen to me. You had to be greedy. After establishing a trade treaty, it would only be a matter of time before we'd have Southerners crossing the border, sniffing around, finding us. Mokkan showed no fear of Brazil, only anger that he had to explain his actions. Now, do you want to kill her, or should I? Spots spun in my eyes as my vision blurred. Before Brazil could answer, Mokkan staggered. His hold on me slipped slightly, releasing my airway. I gasped for air. My children, Mokkan roared. Even without them, I still have more power than you. Like a fish on a hook, I was yanked off my feet and hurled against the wall. My head banged on the stone. Pinned in midair, Mokkan's power pelted me. Each blow felt like a boulder crashing into me. This is it, I thought. Rayad was right. Becoming the food taster had just delayed the inevitable. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Valak fighting his guards as he tried to reach Mokkan. Too late for me. With a final surge of strength, I mentally reached out. I hit an impenetrable barrier as I felt my consciousness drain. Blackness filled my world. Then Iris's voice was there in my mind, soothing. Here, she said. Let me help you. Pure power flowed into me. I reconstructed my mental shield and deflected Mokkan's onslaught, pushing him back. He crashed into the opposite wall with a satisfying thud. Confusion reigned in the commander's chambers. Inexperienced with magic, as I was, I couldn't restrain Mokgan. He bolted from the room. With a knife in his hand, Valak fought 3 guards with swords. As I rushed to help Valak, Brazil grabbed my arm and spun me around to face him. He raised his sword. Murder blazed in his eyes. I jumped back to avoid the first swing of his sword and bumped against the commander's bed. I had leaped onto the bed to avoid Brazil's next swing. I glanced down. The commander's gaze was still fixed on the ceiling. Brazil's third swing severed one of the bedposts. As I dived from the end of the bed to avoid another blow, I seized the post from the floor. Now I was armed. The post wasn't balanced properly for a bow, but it was thick, better than nothing. Brazil was a powerful opponent. Each swing of his sword hacked chunks out of my weapon. At first he scoffed at my attempts to fight him. "What do you think you're doing? You're a skinning nothing. I'll gut you in 2 moves. When I found my mental zone of power, he stopped wasting his breath. Even sensing his next attack, I still scrambled to stay 1 step ahead of him. My wooden post was no match for his sword. Rayad's ghost materialised in the room. He cheered his father on, trying to distract me. His tactics worked. My back hit the wall. Brazil's sword split the post in half. "You're dead." With gleeful satisfaction, Brazil pulled his sword back to slash at my neck, but I still held a part of the wood. As his sword swung close, I deflected the weapon downward with my broken post. The tip cut across my wrist. The sound of ripping fabric accompanied a line of fire across my stomach. Blood soaked the ripped ends of my uniform shirt. Then Brazil made his first error. Thinking I was finished, he relaxed his guard, but I was still on my feet. I raised my weapon. With desperate strength, I struck him across the temple. He crumpled to the floor. We crumpled to the floor together. I gazed at the ceiling, trying to regain my breath. Valak hovered over me. I shooed him away. "Find Mokkan." He disappeared from my view. Once strength returned to my limbs, I examined my wound. Running a finger along the gash, I thought all I needed was some of Rand's glue. Rayad's ghost floated over me, sneering. I couldn't bear lying on the floor with him in the room. Cursing and bleeding, I stood. "You!" I stabbed a bloody finger at him. "Go away." "Make me," he challenged. How could I fight a ghost? I moved into a defensive stance. He scoffed. "No, not a physical fight, a mental one." I thought about what I had accomplished in the year and a half since I had slit Rayad's throat, overcoming my fears to make friends, confronting my enemies, finding love, how I felt about myself, who I was. I looked into the gilded floor-length mirror of the commander's room. My hair was wild. My shirt was soaked with blood, my face streaked with dirt, almost the same reflection when I first became the food taster, but this time there was something different. The shadows of doubt were gone. I peered deeper and found my soul, a little tattered and with some holes, but there all the same. It had always been there, I realised with a shock. If Rayad and Mokgan had truly driven it from me, I would be chained to a floor right now and not standing over Brazil's unconscious form. I was in control. This new person in the mirror was free of all poisons. I glanced at Brazil. He was still breathing, but I was in charge of him and of myself. In command, no longer a victim, no longer the rat caught in the metal jaws of a trap. "Be gone," I ordered Rayad's ghost. His shocked expression gave me great joy as he vanished. But joy was like a butterfly, alighting on a hand, a brief rest before flying away. Janko's hurt. Iris's alarmed voice resounded in my skull. We need a medic. Come now. Using manacles from a dead guard's belt, I handcuffed Brazil to the heavy bed. Then I bolted from the room. I raced through the corridors. He can't die, I thought, not Janko. I wouldn't be able to bear with his death. Horrible scenarios played in my mind. I was so preoccupied that I rushed right toward Valak and Mokgan without even recognising them. They duelled with swords. The reason the scene had taken a while to clarify in my mind was because Mokgan had the upper hand. Valak's pale face was haggard. He swung his sword as if it was a dead weight. His natural grace had fled, and what remained were sporadic, jerky movements. Mokkan, on the other hand, was quick and competent, technically accurate, but lacking style. My disbelief and concern grew as I watched the match. What was wrong with Valak? Was it Mokgan's magic? No, Valak was immune to it, I thought. Then realisation dawned. Valak had said, being close to a magician felt like wading in thick syrup, and Valak had fought 7 guards in the commander's room after spending the last 2 days in the dungeon without food or sleep. Exhaustion had finally caught up to him. Mokkan's grin widened when he spotted me hovering nearby. He executed a lightning-quick feint and then lunged. Valak's sword clattered to the floor as a crimson slash snaked up his arm. "What an incredible day," Mokkan exclaimed. "I get to kill the famous Valak and the infamous Yelena at the same time." I triggered my switchblade. Mokkan laughed. He sent me a magical command to drop my blade. Just as my hand released the blade, I heard Iris's voice in my head. "Yelena, what's wrong? Did you find the medic?" "I need help," I cried in my mind. Power swelled inside me, pushing to break free. I aimed a finger of power toward Mokkan. His sword dropped from his hand. Terror gripped his face as the magic swaddled him like a baby, then tightened like a noose. He was paralysed, rooted to the floor. "You rat-spawned daughter of a demon," Mokgan cursed. "You're a blight on this earth, an incarnation of hell. You're just like the rest of them. The Zaltana bloodline should be burned out, erased, exterminated." Mokgan raged on, but I ceased to listen. Valak picked up my switchblade. Mokkan's curses grew louder and more frantic as Valak approached him. A blur of movement, a shriek of pain, then Mokgan was finally silent. His body sank into a heap on the ground. He handed me my bloody knife. With an exhausted bow he said, "My love, for you." Chapter 32. I gasped, remembering. "Janko!" Grabbing Valak's arm, I dragged him with me, explaining between huffs of breath. Still wearing Brazil's colours, although torn and bloodstained, we roused the medic, who, with peevish annoyance, fussed about protocol and proper authority until Valak drew his knife. My stomach heaved when we entered Rayad's wing. The hallway leading to the captives' room was gruesome. Soldiers littered the floor. Pieces of arms and legs were scattered about as if someone had hacked their way through them. The walls were splattered with blood and pools of scarlet dotted the floor. The medic wanted to stop at the first man, but Valak yanked him to his feet, stepping carefully around the bodies. We reached the doorway. Just inside, I saw Janko lying on his side, with his head in Ari's lap. He was unconscious, which was a good thing, since a sword had skewered his stomach. The bloody tip poked from his back. Ari's gore-splashed face held a grim expression. A crimson-coated axe, the weapon responsible for the carnage in the hallway, rested next to him. Iris sat cross-legged in the centre of the circle of emaciated people. Her brow glistened with sweat. Her expression was distant. The chained women and men viewed the scene with dispassionate eyes. The trip to the infirmary was a chaotic nightmare. Everything blurred together like a whirlwind until I found myself lying in a bed next to Janko, holding his hand. The medic did his best, but if the sword had pierced any vital organs, or if there was internal bleeding, Janko wouldn't survive. Twice during the night, Ari and I despaired that we would lose him. My own wound had been cleaned and sealed with Rand's glue, but I had hardly noticed and cared about the throbbing pain. I aimed all my energy and strength towards Janko, willing him to live. Late the next day, I woke from a light doze. "Sleeping on the job," Janko whispered with a weak smile on his ashen face. I breathed a sigh of relief. Surely, if he was strong enough to insult me, then he was on his way to recovery. Unfortunately, Iris couldn't say the same about the commander. 4 days after Mokkan's death, he still hadn't regained his spirit. His advisors had rebounded from their brief encelment, and they had commandeered Brazil's manor while waiting for the commander to return. They assumed temporary control of the military district. Messengers were sent north to General Tesso of MD4 and west to General Hazal of MD6, requesting their immediate presence. The generals would have the authority to determine what the next step would be in case the commander failed to revive. Just as confusing was the fact that none of Brazil, Mokkan, or Riyadh's victims woke to Iris's prodding. She had tried to enter their minds, to break through to where their self-awareness was hiding. Iris reported that their minds were like abandoned houses, fully furnished, with embers still smoking in the fireplace, but no one home. Iris and I resigned ourselves to the knowledge that the victims would live out their days unaware of their new, comfortable surroundings in Brazil's guest wing. I mourned over the loss of my friend Cara. Iris had sought out the rooms used by the orphans and reported that May was still there, alive and well. I planned to visit with May as soon as Janko regained some of his strength. It's obvious that the children in Brazil's orphanage were kidnapped from Sitia, Iris explained, visiting me in the infirmary at Janko's bedside. Mokkan's ring of child thieves spaced their abductions far enough apart to avoid detection. Magic is usually stronger in women, and that explains why there are more girls. The kidnappers targeted bloodlines where magic was present, although they took a gamble with children that young. There's no way to be sure the power will develop. Mokkan and Brazil must have planned this for a long time. Iris raked her fingers through her long black brown hair. Finding your family shouldn't be too difficult. I blinked at her in shock. You're joking, right? Why would I joke? She was unaware of the emotional tailspin she'd caused me. She was right. Joking wasn't her style, so I thought for a moment. Before he died, Mokkan said something about the Zaltana bloodline. Zaltana! Wiping away her usual serious expression, Iris laughed. It was like the sun coming out after weeks of rain. I think they did lose a girl. My goodness. You're in for a real surprise if you're part of the Zaltana clan. That would explain why you alone didn't cave under Mokkan's spell. Questions hovered on my lips. I wanted to know more about this family, but I didn't want to get my hopes up. There was the possibility that I wasn't a Zaltana. I guess I would find out when I reached Sitia. Iris wanted to start my magical training right away. Uneasiness hovered in my chest. When I thought of leaving Ixia, I changed the subject. How's the commander? Iris confessed her frustration. He's different from the children. There's nothing in their minds, but he's retreated to a white place. If I can only find where he is, then I might be able to bring him back. I considered this for a while and thought back to my time in the war room when I had fallen asleep. May I try? Why not? I made sure Janko was comfortable and had everything he desired. Iris accompanied me to the commander's room. The bodies had been removed and someone had attempted to clean up. I perched on the edge of the commander's bed and took his cold hand in mine. Following Iris's instructions, I closed my eyes, sending my mental awareness towards him. My feet crunched on ice. A cold wind stabbed my face, and I filled my lungs with tiny daggers. Dazzling white surrounded me, diamond dust or snowflakes. It was hard to tell. I walked for a while and was immediately confused by the sparkling blizzard. Stumbling through the storm, I fought to remain calm and to remind myself that I was not lost. Whenever I took a step forward, the icy wind drove me back. I was about to admit defeat when I remembered why I had thought I could find the commander. Focusing on the scene of a young woman exulting over a slain snowcat caused the wind to stop and the blizzard to clear. I stood next to Ambrose. She was dressed in heavy white hunting furs that resembled the skin of a cat. Come back, I said. I can't, she said, pointing into the distance. Thin black bars surrounded us on all sides. A bird cage was my first impression, but upon closer scrutiny, I could see that the bars were soldiers, armed with swords. Every time I have tried to leave, they push me back. Fury flamed in her face before dying into weary. But you're the commander. Not here. Here I'm just Ambrosia, trapped inside my mistake of a body. The soldiers know about my curse. I searched my mind for a reply. The guards didn't belong to Mokkan. They belonged to her. My eyes were drawn to the snowcat's carcass. How did you kill the cat? Her face came alive as she recounted how she had bathed in snowcat scent and spent weeks cloaked in snowcat furs, pretending to be one of the animals until they allowed her to be part of their pack. In the end, it was only a matter of time and the perfect opportunity to make the kill. Proof that I was really a man, that I had won the right to be a man. Then perhaps you need to wear your prize, I suggested. Skins will not help you against that lot. I jerked my head at the ring of guards. Comprehension widened the woman's golden eyes. She gazed at the slain cat. then morphed into the commander. Her shoulder-length hair shortened into his buzz cut, fine lines of age growing on her face as he emerged. The white furs dropped to the ground as his wrinkle-free uniform materialized. He stepped away from the skins, kicking them dismissively. "You shouldn't do that," I said. "She's part of you. You might need her again." "And do I need you, Yelena? Can I trust you to keep my mutation a secret?" the commander asked with a fierce intensity. "I came here to bring you back. Isn't that answer enough?" Valak swore me a blood oath of loyalty when I carved my initial into his chest. "Would you do the same?" "Does Valak know about Ambrosia?" I asked. "No, you haven't answered my question." I showed the commander Valak's butterfly. "I wear this against my chest. I've pledged my loyalty to Valak, who is faithful to you." The commander reached for the butterfly. I stood still as he removed it from my necklace. He took a knife from the skins and sliced it across his palm. Holding the pendant in his bloody hand, he extended the knife towards me. I held out my right hand, wincing as the knife bit into it. Our blood mixed as I shook his hand with the butterfly wedged between our palms. When he released his grip, Valak's gift was in my hand. I returned it to its proper place over my heart. "How do we get back?" he asked. "You're the commander." His eyes rested on the dead cat. Looking around at the ring of soldiers, he drew his sword. "We fight," he said. I pulled the spear from the cat's side and wiped the blood on the snow. Feeling the weight of the weapon in my grip, I swung it around in a few practice moves. It was lighter than a bow and a bit off balance by the metal tip, but it would work. We charged the men. The circle of guards tightened immediately around us. Back to back, the commander and I fought. The men were skilled, but the commander was a master swordsman. He had bested Valak and killed a snowcat. It was like fighting with 5 more defenders by my side. When I sunk the spear's tip into the guard's heart, he exploded into a shower of snow crystals that floated away with the wind. Time slowed as I hacked at one man after another, until finally time snapped to the present. I whirled around searching for an opponent, only to discover that we had dispatched all the men. Snow whirled around us. "Nice work," the commander said. "You helped me rediscover my true self, killing off my demons." He took my hand and pressed it to his lips. The wintry scene melted, and I found myself back on the bed, looking into the commander's powerful eyes. That night, Valak and I briefed the commander on all that had happened since the general's brandy meeting. Valak had Brazil interrogated and discovered that Brazil and Mogcan had been planning a coup for the past 10 years. Brazil told me that Mogcan showed up at his manor with a group of children, Valak said. He was looking for a place to hide, and he struck a deal with Brazil to help Brazil become the next commander. Once Mogcan achieved enough power to reach your mind from MD5, they started feeding you Crelio, sir. "What about the factory?" the commander asked. "We have halted production," Valak said. "Good. Salvage what equipment you can, then burn the factory and any Crelio to the ground." "Yes, sir." "Anything else?" "One more interesting item. Brazil said that once he and Mogcan had control of Ixia, they planned to take over Sitia." The next day, the commander held court with Valak, standing at his right side. Brazil was brought before him to face charges. As expected, Brazil was stripped of his rank and sentenced to spend the rest of his life in the commander's dungeon. Permitted a few last words, Brazil shouted, "You fools! Your commander's a deceiver. You've been lied to for years. The commander's really a woman dressed as a man." Silence blanketed the room, but the commander's neutral expression never faltered. Soon laughter echoed off the stone walls. Brazil was hauled away amid cheers and jeers. Who would believe the ravings of a madman? Obviously, no one. I thought about their jeers. They laughed, not because the idea of a woman in power was ridiculous, but because Commander Ambrose had a powerful presence. His frank and abrupt dealings were so honest and forthright that the thought of him deceiving anyone was laughable. And due to his beliefs and convictions about himself, even though I knew the truth, I could not think of him in any other way. Later in the day, I went to visit the orphanage. I found May in the dormitory. This time, happy memories followed me as I walked through the rooms used by the orphans. When she saw me, May bounced off the bed and wrapped herself around me. "Yelena, I thought I would never see you again," she gushed. I squeezed her tight. When she pulled back, I smiled to see her crooked skirt and messy ponytail. As I braided her hair, May chatted about what had happened since I had left. Her excitement faded when she talked about Cara, and it was then that I could see how much she had grown. When I finished her hair, she said, "We're going with you to sit here." May spun in a circle, unable to remain still. She waved toward a suitcase on the floor. "What?" "That lady from the south told us that she would take us home to find our families." A brief pang clenched my heart. Family had a different meaning to me. Valak, Ari and Janko felt like my family, and even Marin seemed like a grumpy old sister. "That's wonderful," I said to May, trying to match her enthusiasm. May stopped her dance for a moment. "There are so few of us left," she said in a sedated voice. "Valak will make sure Cara and the others are taken good care of." "Valak? He's so handsome," May laughed, and was so delightful I couldn't resist hugging her again. Janko, on the other hand, greeted me with a gloomy face when I stopped to say goodbye. Iris is anxious to head south, wanted to be on the road in the morning. Ari had taken over my role of nurse and was sitting next to Janko. "Whatever happened to sieges weathered, fight together, friends forever?" I asked him, quoting his message on my switchblade. His eyes lit up. "You little fox, figured it out already, have you?" I smirked. "As soon as Janko's better, we're coming south," Ari said. "And what would you do there?" I asked. "Work on our tans," Janko said, smiling. "I could use a vacation." "Protect you," Ari said. "I don't need protection in the south," I said. And I seem to remember that not long ago I bested 2 of my instructors. "She's cocky already," Janko sighed. "We can't go with her now. She'll be swaggering and boasting and generally obnoxious. It'll be bad enough I have to deal with that from Ari. I could never handle 2. "Besides," I said, "you'll be bored." Ari grumped and crossed his massive arms, looking sour. "First sign of trouble, you send us a message, and we'll be there. You got that?" Ari asked. "Yes, sir," I said. "Don't worry about me, Ari. I'll be fine. And I'll be back." "You'd better," Janko said. "I want a rematch." But I had spoken too soon about returning. Valak, Iris and I had discussed my future, but the commander seemed to have other plans. Commander Ambrose called for a formal meeting that evening, with just Valak, Harry and Iris in attendance in Brazil's old office. The commander agreed to honour the trade treaty, even though it had been enacted under Mokkan's influence. Then he told me my fate. Yelena, he began in a formal tone, you have saved my life, and for that I thank you. But you have magical abilities that are not tolerated in Ixia. I have no choice but to sign an order for your execution. Valak placed a warning hand on Harry's shoulder to prevent him from charging the commander. Harry stayed still, but his outrage was evident on his face. When the commander held a paper out to Valak, coldness crept along my skin, leaving behind a numb feeling of dread. Valak didn't move. Sir, I've always believed that having a magician work for us would be beneficial and could have prevented this particular situation, Valak said. We can trust her. A valid point. The commander drew back his arm, resting it on the desk. Even though we trust her, even though she saved my life, I must follow the code of behaviour. To do otherwise would be a sign of weakness, something I can't afford right now, especially after this business with Mokkan. Plus, the generals and my advisors will not trust her. Once again, the commander extended the execution order to Valak. In my frantic mind, I heard Iris telling me to flee. She would attempt to slow Valak down. No, I told her, I would see this to the end. I would not run away. I won't take it, Valak said in a flat voice. He betrayed no emotion. You would disobey a direct order? The commander asked. No, if I don't take the order, then I won't have to disobey it. And if I make it a verbal order, I will obey, but it will be my very last task for you. Valak pulled a knife off his belt. The ring of steel sounded as Harry unsheathed his sword. You'll have to get through me first, he said, stepping in front of me. Harry had a better than average chance of beating Valak, but I knew he wouldn't win, and I didn't want him to try. No, Harry, I said. I pushed his sword down and stood next to Valak. Our eyes met. I understood that Valak's loyalty to the commander was without question. His blue eyes held a fierce determination, and I knew in my soul that Valak would take his own life after he had taken mine. The commander gazed at us with a quiet consideration. I felt time freeze under his scrutiny. I've signed the order per the code, the commander finally said. I will assign someone else to carry it out. It may take a few days for me to find a suitable person. He looked at me and Iris, a hint that we needed to get on the road as soon as possible. This order is valid in Ixia only. You're all dismissed. The office emptied in a hurry. I was giddy with relief as Iris swept me into his bear hugs and whooped with joy, but then my heart seized with pain as I realised that I would be parted from Valak so soon after we had joined. After Iris and Harry left to organise the escape, Valak pulled me aside. We kissed with passion and a desperate urgency. After we drew apart to catch our breaths, I said, "Come with me." It wasn't a plea or a question, it was an invitation. Valak's blue eyes closed with pain. I can't. I turned away, feeling like one of Valak's black statues, but he drew me back. Yelena, you need to learn. You need to find your family. You need to spread your wings and see how far you can fly. You don't need me right now, but the commander needs me. I clung to Valak. He was right. I didn't need him, but I wanted him to be with me forever. We left that night. Iris led our ragtag group, 8 girls and 2 boys from Brazil's orphanage. Brazil's orphanage followed Iris through the forest towards the southern border. I took the rear guard position to make sure everyone stayed together and to make sure no one tailed our group. We hiked for a few hours until we found a suitable clearing to camp for the night. More than adequate provisions for our journey had been provided by Harry. I smiled, remembering his lecture to me about staying out of trouble, just like an overprotective brother. He wasn't content until I promised to send him a message if I needed help. I would miss him and Janko dearly. We set up 6 small tents in a circle. Iris amazed the children as she set fire to the kindling with a magical flourish. After everyone had gone to sleep, I sat by the fire stirring the dying embers, unwilling to join me in our tent. I gazed at the single flame that erupted when I poked the fire. It danced by itself, for an audience of 1. I wondered for the 100th time why Valak hadn't come to say goodbye. Fingering my pendant, I sensed movement. Jumping up, I drew my bow. A shadow detached from the tree. Iris had created a magical barrier around our tents. According to her, the barrier would deflect a person's vision, so all he would see was an empty clearing. The shadow stopped at the edge, unaffected by the magic, and smiled at me. Valak. He held out a hand. I grasped his cold fingers with both hands as he led me away from the tents and deeper into the forest. Why didn't you come before we left? I asked him when we stopped at the base of the trees. The roots of the massive oak had broken through the ground, creating small protective hollows. I was busy making sure the commander would have a hard time locating someone to carry out his orders. Valak grinned with vicious delight. It's amazing how much work there is clearing up after Brazil. I thought about what that clean-up would entail. Who is tasting the commander's food? I asked. For now, I am, but I believe Captain Starr would make an excellent candidate. Since she knows who all the assassins are, I think her help will be invaluable. It was my turn to smile. Starr would do well if she passed the training. If. Enough talk, Valak said, guiding me down between the roots. I need to give you a proper send-off. My last night in Ixia was spent with Valak beneath the tree. The hours till dawn flew by. The rising sun intruded, waking me from a contented doze in Valak's arms, forcing me to face the day that I had to leave him. Sensing my mood, Valak said, an execution order hasn't kept us apart before. There are always ways of getting round it. We will be together. Is that an order? Nope. A promise. After being set free, Yelena is about to begin the adventure of her life as she starts her magic training. When plans take a radical turn, Yelena needs more than magic to help her with some new enemies and enlist the help of old familiar friends. The quest continues. So, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the story. Don't forget, like the video. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And please enjoy the end of the video. You will see the finished yarn at the end. Thank you to all the returning subscribers. Thank you to all the new subscribers. Don't forget, no matter where you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening or night time, I'd like you to do what you love doing. Love and hugs to all you fantastic people out there, and I'll definitely see you all again very soon. Goodbye, my beautifuls. Mwah.